Hello, creeps. It's me, John-Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Chronicles from the Crypt.
Hello there, I'm Casualty Chris.
And this is Father Malone.
We are the hosts of Chronicles from the Crypt, a twice-a-month look at the cult horror anthology series Tales from the Crypt that aired on HBO from 1989 to 1996.
Now, on each of our podcasts, we're going to be tackling 2 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and along the way, we're going to have some bonus episodes about movies and TV shows that are kind of based on the show, like a game show and a kids' cartoon series, and some other tangentially related Tales material.
So on this episode of Chronicles from the Crypt, we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 9 and 10, Four-Sided Triangle, and the Ventriloquist Dummy.
She loves me. She loves me not. She loves me. She loves me not. Blah! What do flowers know about love anyway? Well, hello there, boils and ghouls. Just getting in the mood for tonight's tawdry tale. A story of love and lurid lust in the dust. Sure to arouse the sickies amongst you to some heavy breathing. A tale I call Four-Sided Triangle.
Four-Sided Triangle was aired May 29th, 1990. It's directed by Tom Holland, written by Tom Holland and James Tugend, stars Patricia Arquette, Chelsea Ross, and Susan Blomert, and the episode centers around Chelsea Ross as a farmer who is obsessed with Patricia Arquette's nubile young woman who helps out with the chores. The problem is, she may or may not be in love with a scarecrow. Now, before you say anything, Mike, I just want you to understand, multiple times watching this episode this evening, I said to my wife, I fucking hate this episode. I hate that we're having to watch it for this. I hate that I'm having to watch it again. And I have a physically adverse reaction to watching this episode. I really don't like this episode.
But we're talking about one of the best episodes of Tales from the Crypt of all time.
I swear to God, you're kidding, right?
Yeah, no, this is not a good episode. I mean, I don't think I hated it as much as you did.
I can't tell, is Chelsea Ross's character and Patricia Arquette's character supposed to be mentally retarded? Because that's kind of what they're going for, and if that's not what they're going for, that's the way it comes off, and I don't know how to react to it because it's just so... the choices that are made for the characters in this episode are so strange that it defies explanation.
It certainly does. Okay, now, just to get to the nuts and bolts of it, this is not a Tales from the Crypt adaptation. This is a shock suspense story. Surprise! Number 17. It was actually written by Carl Wessler and drawn by the late, great Jack Kamen. Let me talk about Jack Kamen just for a second, because if you don't know Jack Kamen, you probably have heard of his son, Dean Kamen, who created the Segway. But anyway, and let me take that as a segue to... Now, in the comic book... You've been
waiting to do that one all week, haven't you?
You know what? I haven't. It just came to me, and I regretted it instantly. Anyway, the comic, it's almost exactly the same story. It is about, this young girl who is working on a farm for this sort of, not elderly couple, but they're pushing it. And the wife is kind of a crone that won't sleep with the guy anymore, and he has designs on the girl. In the comic, they point out over and over again that she is, in fact, feeble-minded or a half-wit and has fallen in love with a scarecrow in their cornfield, and she rebuffs this old man's advances because she's saving herself for her man. they do something different in this where I'm assuming Patricia Arquette robbed a liquor store or a convenience store and was on the run, and they took her in, and now they're using her as sort of a forced slave labor on their farm with the threat that they're going to turn her into the police if she doesn't do as she's told. And so... yeah, I mean, it has origins where at least her character is supposed to be sort of mentally impaired, but I don't think it's meant to be that in this. Nevertheless, she does kind of come off that way. I think maybe by the end, like, she was sort of just playing this part so she could get away from them, but I kept thinking during the entire episode, like, at any time, she could just walk away. I mean, they kind of tell her that she's like 60 miles from anywhere, but, you know, you could probably get pretty far on foot, like with these old people. Like, particularly the female character is in a leg brace. She can't really walk all that far. But you know, I didn't hate it as much as you did. I think it wasn't great. I'm very disappointed that it was Tom Holland who directed this one, because he's directed some of my favorite films, and you know, he even had a hand in writing this one. But not great overall.
I just, you know, I think it's again this whole love triangle thing. I'm really sick of it, because this is again another love triangle. Any way you cut it, any way you slice it, any way you dice it, any way you stab it with a pitchfork, this is a love triangle episode. So much so that that's the title of the episode.
Yeah.
And there's nothing supernatural about it. Nothing. There's nothing. Even though the idea that possibly the Scarecrow is alive because she kind of hallucinates it, that's fine. It never is the case. It's used as a kind of a bait and switch device for the end of the episode, but you know where the episode's going pretty quickly on. You're just kind of curious as to how it's going to end exactly. But the performances are so strange. And Patricia Arquette, again, acting like she's mentally handicapped. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I don't know. Like you said, in the comics, like you said, it is. That was a choice they made. But in the episode, they don't say that. And then Chelsea Ross, when they introduce him, seems like he's mentally handicapped. It almost seems like he is the other hired help, like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. And then it turns out that he is her husband. And he's like perving it up on Patricia Arquette, which, by the way, Patricia Arquette is a beautiful woman. Then, now, forever. And
yeah, I kind of felt like a perv myself even watching this episode. She's like 22 years old here, and I'm just like staring at her like, oh my god, she's so gorgeous. This
episode is like,
it really is.
She's never wearing a bra, ever. In this episode, she is braless. You can see her breasts pretty much in every scene. And one scene, you can see part of her ass. And it's not, look, this is Tales from the Crypt. It's kind of pulpy, so it's kind of, I get what they're going for, but it's a little much.
Curse you, Tom Holland, for putting us in the mind of the perv.
Right. Well, it's like, look, okay, you know, she's a beautiful woman, like I said, but it feels uncomfortable, and
it does, only because it doesn't feel like when we first sort of meet Chelsea Ross's character and he's like peeping on her. Like, we do need to understand it from his perspective, and I get that. But then we kind of just keep going back. Like, he keeps having dreams about her, where it's even like slow-mo versions of things we've seen, and like more close-ups of her cleavage, or like her bent over, and it just, it felt like really exploitative at that point.
Well, and again, I couldn't tell if he was mentally handicapped or not. So that added like another layer of just like, is it like a mentally handicapped man and another mentally handicapped character? You know, I didn't know. And it weirded me out. And the whole thing with the Scarecrow is so fucking dumb. Like, I'm in love with a Scarecrow is not a line that should be uttered in anything. Because it sounds so dumb and so dorky and so goofy. And yeah, it's Tales from the Crypt, but the one scene that they have is her having like been knocked over the head with a bottle, and he's like reaching out to her, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I did sort of anticipate a more supernatural ending for it, not just that she hallucinated it.
Like, I always remember this episode incorrectly in that the Scarecrows do come to life and like murder the shit out of these people.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for that. I hoped for it the first time I saw it, and I was kind of hoping for it again, even though I knew that was not the case.
And that's, again, I think that's the other problem I have with this episode. It feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah. But before we rail on it some more, let's just mention Susan Blumart. Susan Blumart. Susan Blumart. There we go. I got to it eventually. She's great, man. I love her. She is a character actress. You would know her instantly if you saw her. And I will always fondly remember her from around this time period. She starred in an episode of The X-Files, one of my favorite, if not my favorite.
Oh, my God.
Yes, The Hand of Verlitz. Yeah, written by Glenn Morgan and James Wong, about a satanic high school, or like a group of Satanists in a high school who have actually summoned the devil, but are not in any way prepared for what she has in store for them. And Susan Blumart plays the devil. She is so fucking scary in that episode, while also being kind of charming about it. I was really disappointed that she never came back on the series. I was always kind of waiting for her. She's wildly underrated there. I've said it again. And I think she does a good job in this. All the acting, I think, is actually pretty good. I like Chelsea Ross a lot. I think I will always remember him from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey as the sort of commandant of the military school that they're threatening to send Ted to. And, you know, Patricia Arquette is Patricia Arquette. She's, you know, if you like her, you like her. If you don't, you don't.
And this is 3 years removed from Dream Warrior. So that's why she's in this. She's in this because of Dream Warriors, by the way.
Totally. I mean, yeah, I mean, you definitely. And, you know, I always appreciate when you see an actor in their career getting better at their craft, and I think this is like a step up from kind of the stuff she was doing in Dream Warrior. So I think this is, you know, a step towards a more well-formed, creative personality. But Jesus Christ, it's not a good episode.
I feel like the thing that would have made this episode better, and it probably would have fixed it in my mind, is instead of having the two characters seemingly mentally handicapped, at the end, have the character of Mary Jo, played by Patricia Arquette, have the payoff be that she was, like, getting, you know, egging them on the whole time. And that it was her.
That's what I was hoping for.
Right. And they kind of like, they have that at the end, but like they needed to be a little bit more explicit with it and show like she's not a dullard. She actually was planning this to get rid of it.
Right. Yeah. And as soon as it happens, I was like, oh man, maybe she pulled a fast one on them, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like she just recognizes an opportunity and takes it and then sort of, and is able to escape. Like, and you know what? Let's just talk about the fucking scarecrow for a second. Because first of all, the clown mask was stupid. The corncob pipe was off-putting. It didn't come off as scary or funny or interesting in any way. It's the worst scarecrow I've ever seen. And so, you know, effectively, the character, Patricia Arquette's character, like Mary Jo, she's in love with this scarecrow and she sneaks out every night to like go frolic with it. And she's hoping it'll come alive to make love to her. So this guy has finally figured out, like, maybe if I just go get in the scarecrow outfit, I can fuck this girl. But they telegraph to us instantly that it's him in there. So when his wife shows up and starts slamming it with a pitchfork, we already know he's in there. It's like there's no shock to it. There's no surprise to it. And it doesn't feel like these reprehensible characters should feel any of my or your sympathy. So it's just like the ending is so telegraphed that it like robs it of any potential shock. And like, you know, if you read the comic book, like I said, it's this feeble character and she is in love with this scarecrow and she's waiting for him to come to life and he does this thing. But then the wife shows up and it starts slamming the hell out of it. But as a reader, you don't know that it's the husband. They somehow pulled that off in the comic and they were unable to here, other than the fact that they showed a close-up of the guy's eyes before anything happens. I don't know, man. It is a failure of an episode.
Yeah, it's an episode that I like you said, I think it fails where it really shouldn't, and it shouldn't have had this hard a time at being successful. It really shouldn't have. And the title alone is just like so dumb. Four-sided triangle because there's
I don't like
triangle with the scarecrow. Really? Okay, great. Yeah, this is a total skip for me, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean it's not as bad as some of the ones we've seen, but I can't recommend it. I'm gonna say skip it.
And again, it's also another love triangle episode. So great.
Enough
of them. So let's talk about the next episode, Ventriloquist Dummy.
dear fans. You're just in time. Contents: 1 ventriloquist dummy, Hackney Novelty Company, Battle Shriek, Michigan. Oh, goody. Watch this, kiddies. You won't see my lips move. You know why? I don't have any. Well, hello, Dickie. Would you like me to tell a tale from the crypt? No thanks, Desperate. And how about sitting a little closer to the fire? That's better. Now I can dole out a diseased little ditty about the schizophrenic nature of showbiz and how to hack your way to the top. So grab hold of your guts, kiddies, 'cause tonight you get to rub elbows with the ventriloquist's dummy.
Episode aired June 5th, 1990, directed by Richard Donner, written by Frank Darabont, stars Don Rickles and Bobcat Goldthwait, and it centers around a amateur ventriloquist played by Bobcat Goldthwait who learns that being a ventriloquist might not be the best career for him from his childhood idol, played by Don Rickles. I'm going to kind of go on a limb here and say that this episode is very much like For Crying Out Loud for me.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
I remember it a lot more fondly than when I went back and watched it.
So that's funny because, yeah, I mean, that was my reaction to For Crying Out Loud. Like, I remembered liking it a lot and then watched it again and thought, like, well, it's serviceable. But, I mean, it's pretty good. This one, I remember thinking that it was okay initially, and I liked it a lot more now.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad episode. I just feel like the parts that are good get outweighed by the really weak ending. The ending that is that falls kind of flat.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be, you know, a twist upon a twist upon a twist when the initial things were just fine. So let me just point out that this one is actually based on a Tales from the Crypt comic, Tales from the Crypt number 28. It was actually co-written by...
Supernatural episode, so what a surprise.
Yeah, I know, right? This was written by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein, the creative team behind the entire run of the comics. And it was actually drawn by Graham Engels, who is right up there with Jack Kamen as far as the best of the EC artists. In fact... they pay a bit of tribute to Mr. Engels when they name the Don Rickles character. His name is Engels as well. They changed that from the original comic. And speaking of the original comic, this one is yet another one where they strayed enough from the material to make it more interesting than what they initially had. Because the original comic, it's just this guy's agent who hasn't had the guy's been retired for a while, but he sort of stops in to see how he is because he's now booking a new hotel and he figures the guy could probably use some work even though he's had kind of a shady past, and there's no sort of hero worship going on here or a span of time from childhood to adulthood. It's just the guy gets the guy, brings him to the new club, and then everything sort of falls apart. Having said that, I do really like this episode, but my main complaint with it, other than, as you said, the too many twists, is it feels a little like Star Wars humor. You see a joke in a Star Wars movie, it's not actually funny, but all the characters are laughing for some reason, and the audience is laughing too because that's their level of humor. None of the jokes, the actual jokes that are being told on stage, are funny at all, but you're seeing an audience laugh as if it's the funniest thing they've ever heard, and that drives me crazy in any filmed entertainment.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, my other thing is I love Bobcat and I love Don Rickles. And it's just, I wish this were a little bit better of an episode because they're such great comedians and they're so funny, like you said. They don't really do much with them. They just kind of...
No, certainly not the humor level. And,
right.
Let me just point out for a second, Don Rickles is a really good dramatic actor. We know he's a shock comic and an attack comic, but, on occasion, man, he put in great goddamn performances. Casino is a good example of that.
Yeah, Billy Sherbert in Casino is, one of his, last film roles. And that was in the 90s, but, he was doing TV pretty much from then on, and, Mr. Potato Head and Toy Story, but that's a different ballpark completely. But one of his last movie roles was Casino.
Yeah, he's superlative in that. He's also in one of my favorite movies from the 60s, a Roger Corman film called X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, which he does not play a funny character at all. He's a conniving son of a bitch in it. He's really good. So it's always good to see him doing a dramatic role. I don't know what it is where comics can do dramatic roles really well, but dramatic actors can't necessarily pull off comedic roles. That's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think the story is as good as those guys. Nevertheless, it goes for it. The episode, and Richard Donner here, goes for it in ways that I thought other episodes were lacking, particularly in the gore department. There are some wince-worthy moments near the end involving a cleaver that I thought was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, again, this is more of a supernatural episode than a goddamn love triangle. Thank the Lord above, because I was
thank you.
Really trying to figure out if this show was just some sort of weird, like, daytime soap opera thing, or like an investigation discovery show, because that's really what I was going for with these last couple of, like, love triangle again. It's like, Jesus Christ. This show has the intro with a undead zombie crypt keeper puppet, and you're just going with these, like, fucking love triangles? Guys, come on.
Yeah.
An undead talking creature at the beginning of the show, and we're not doing supernatural stuff? Come on.
Yeah, what is happening?
Right. And so with this episode, it's a little supernatural. Not really. I mean, it reminds me a lot of the Freak Show episode of The X-Files.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Right. The Vincent Schiavelli episode, where it's like...
I thought that too while I was watching it. That's funny.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, this is Don Rickles' situation is a little different, but at the same time, it's an interesting episode. It's a fun episode. It's not funny the way that it should have been when you've got Don Rickles and Bobcat in one episode. And I, like I said, love both of them. And then the ending is so unbelievably stupid that it almost takes everything that the episode did right and just squanders it, because the ending has Bobcat saying, okay, hand twin of Don Rickles, who he cut off and then died, yet that thing didn't die for whatever reason.
That's a little suspect.
Right? Let me have you be the puppet, and you can continue on what Don Rickles was doing, but now you don't have to be connected to him. And for some reason, Bobcat Goldthwait is sticking his hand in the puppet, and then the puppet becomes his hand, and by the puppet I mean the little monster twin Morty becomes part of his hand by jamming his... I don't even understand what happens. He jams himself onto his hand, and then there's like a really shitty practical effects shot that they show for like 2 seconds, because I think even they realize how dumb it looks and how unconvincing it is, of like the hand meshed with the Morty puppet. And I'm just like, oh god, okay, all bets are off. This episode really had no idea how to end.
Yeah, that's the thing. The in that original comic, it's the guy like chops the hand off and they both die, and that was enough. It's one of those cases where they want to go further and they want to freak you out even more, but it doesn't make a lick of sense. Like you said, like this creature is attached to Don Rickles' hand, or is his hand, effectively. And so when he chops it off, that thing's going to die. The blood loss is massive. There's no way it's going to continue. Never mind, find a way to slowly morph itself into Bobcat's hand. It doesn't leave you shocked. It just leaves you confused. And that's not how you want to end Tales from the Crypt.
And look, are we nitpicking? Maybe, but at the same time, Don Rickles' character dies. So if his character didn't die, then there'd be nothing to nitpick here. But his character dies. So
he gets his throat ripped out. See, you can chop off your hand and bleed everywhere and still go on.
Yeah, apparently.
No, that's not true. He he was going to die anyway, man. In fact, he probably should have died of blood loss.
Right. And that's and again, like the way this episode should have ended was he goes, the thing where he like pops the Morty into the air and hits him. What he should have done is he should have popped him in the air and hit him into the puppet case, and then he takes the puppet case and throws it into the lake.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, and then he's like, fuck him for being a ventriloquist.
You know what, man? If you stuck him in that meat grinder and ground him up and it was horrible and the thing's screaming and everything, I would have been satisfied with that too.
Like Gremlins, like in Gremlins 2, where the puppet gets stuck in the paper shredder and it's like going completely ballistic, yeah, or grind it up, or just do something that screams, this is Tales from the Crypt, not a really ridiculously goofy ending, because the ending just completely undoes a lot of the end of the episode.
Yeah, and I was really with the episode till then. I mean, barring the lame jokes on stage where people are actually laughing, like I can look beyond that and just go, okay, I'm suspending disbelief in that case. But I like these two characters and I like where it's going, and it's all good. It's all good right up until they make a deal to sort of be together. And wear a stupid Panama hat.
And why would they make that deal when he knew that thing was like a sociopath?
Yeah, right. I mean, just on a simple a simple level of this thing is a sociopath. I don't know. It's the ending doesn't make a lick of sense. If you know what? If you had ended this episode like right after, as soon as he starts putting him in the meat grinder, turn it off, and then you've got a great episode.
I agree. And again, this episode is a watch, but I do think you kind of just have to turn it off right as he's starting to grind up the little Morty hand creature, because past that it becomes it's like the Dark Tower, the final book of the Dark Tower. It's like, if you want the nice ending, stop reading now. If you want to ruin the book for yourself, read on and have the complete series ruined for you. It's like the same thing. Just turn it off, walk away,
and you will have seen a really good episode.
Yeah, but the ending makes it so... The ending hurts this episode more than most endings for episodes have hurt them up until this point.
Yeah. I do like it better than his initial episode, the Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. I think he gets the tone a lot better this time. But
I like Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone more than this episode.
Yeah.
I think it has a better ending. The ending overall, from start to finish, it's a little goofy at the beginning, but I think that the story and the arc you take with the character it makes sense from A to B to C. It makes sense. And the character in that episode gets his comeuppance, but it's deserved and it makes sense. The character that Bobcat plays in this episode is almost a cipher. You know nothing about him other than he wants to be a ventriloquist.
Well, ultimately, I'll say watch it. You should see it. It's worthwhile as a lesser Tales episode. It works. It works certainly better than the fucking vast array of fucking love triangles we've been subjected to.
Well, that is going without saying, I think. Obviously. Yeah. At this point, this is a refreshing walk in the right direction from the love triangle episodes that we've had. So, next two episodes we're going to be talking about, Season 2, Episode 11 and 12, are not love triangles, so prepare yourself for that. We're going to be talking about Judy, You're Not Yourself Today, and Fitting Punishment. One of those episodes is just a total dour, bummer, really bleak episode. If you don't know which one... You'll find out on the next episode. We're actually going to be joined by our good friend, award-winning writer, Jess Byard. So she's going to come join us and talk about Tales from the Crypt, and those are some pretty interesting episodes to talk about because I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about. Until then, where can people find you, Mike?
Oh, well, you can always find me on my YouTube channel, Odd5 Films. Check out my series you've never seen. I sort of reevaluate some movies that have fallen by the wayside or never got their due to begin with. You can also hear me on another podcast called Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast, where I myself and Mike White and this crazy son of a bitch I'm talking to right now, we talk about the revival of the Twilight Zone television series in the mid-'80s, which is one of the best hours of television you will ever see.
You get to see Dad Wes Craven in one of those episodes, and it is worth it.
Goddamn right.
If you're looking for me, you can find me over at the Culture Cast, where I talk about movies once to twice a week with my co-host Eric. You can also find me on the Kolchak tapes, where I talk about Kolchak the Night Stalker with Mike White. If you want to check out more about Chronicles from the Crypt, head on over to chroniclesftc.com, where you can find out more about the show. You can find out our backlog. We've been doing this now. We're only halfway through Season 2 at this point, so go back. Join us for this journey through good, bad, and love triangle episodes galore in this season. Big thanks as always to John-Kassir for the awesome intro, and we'll catch you on the next episode.